Gato Perro back with another video. Today, at long last, another Spider-Man video. Today I wanted to do something a little different and something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and that's go over the entirety, well, sort of, the entirety of this particular Spider-Man wave, but like the essential characters. So basically what's going to be happening is I'm going to be talking about each character from the series that has a figure and its definitive version of it, so that you can complete your collection or start one or whatever it is. And first up, I want to give a big shout out to Sliden. He's somebody I recently met. He's a viewer of mine, and he actually helped me out with completing this collection. So I already cut up the box. I haven't actually peeked inside of it, and he helped out by sending what I know is a black suit Spider-Man inside of this box, and I don't know what other goodies he included in there. So I'm going to go ahead and reach inside. Looks like we got some protection here. And looks like I'm going to have to cut some more. So like I said, I haven't actually peeked inside. And this is actually my first unboxing. So big shout out to him. He actually does have his own channel. I'll leave the link to his channel in the description below. You guys can check it out. And he did include a really badass black suit Spider-Man, which I've actually never had in my collection. Pop on the head here. And oh wow, that's tougher than I thought it would be. There we go. So we have black suit Spidey. And he also included his web, so that's really neat. So first, taking a closer look at this Spider-Man, it's really cool. I actually really underestimated how really well sculpted this was. Me personally, I've always tried to get this Spider-Man, the black suit Spider-Man that comes with the painted on gray lines that represents more of the symbiote halfway taking over Spider-Man. Because in the first time that Peter gets a symbiote on him, it looks a lot like how he did in Spider-Man 3. You can still see all the web lines. But that particular figure has like half a web line, so it's like halfway down his chest. I think it might be like halfway up his gloves and his boots. But this one's really cool. This is a full symbiote takeover. I always really loved the symbiote story in this particular Spider-Man, especially when it delves inside his mind and he starts remembering everything from his past. And it basically turns into a semi-origin story with the symbiotes alongside Peter. And with Uncle Ben too. So we're going to put him aside. So that's the first figure. You can get that figure in a multitude of ways. There's one with like a sticky web. But not the one that sticks to a wall. Instead it's like a singular, like it almost looks like a strand of a web sort of. And other stuff like different gadgets and stuff. So you can't go wrong with that one. Next up, we're taking a look at the classic traditional red suit Spidey. This one in particular is the Season 1, I like to call it. I do still have the box because it's actually where he's been hiding in my collection for a while now. I talked about this figure in my previous channel, not on Gato Perro. But to go over this one really quickly, he has some really good sculpting in the sense that it matches the show, its aesthetics, and it's the redo in a much more show-accurate version, because the first version of this red suit Spidey looked nothing like it. I'm guessing they must have gotten some early production arts. But as you can see, it matches a lot with this black suit Spidey, and in fact they might actually still share the same sculpts. But this red suit Spidey does actually have the black web lines indented into his costume, so it looks really cool. Has a much lighter blue. To finish it off with the Spider-Mans, we'll talk about this other one that you guys might be familiar with, because it's actually one of my most viewed videos on my channel. It's the Spider Charged Spider-Man, the one with a whole bunch more articulation. So I've talked about this one in detail in that video. If you haven't seen it, I'll leave a link to it. But as you can see, it's basically the same as this one, but with a lot more articulation. The colors are a little bit more different, especially the blue. So you can't go wrong with this one. This one in particular is from the Spider Charge series, and it does have about 2 different releases. There's this traditional one, and there is also the one that comes with like some kind of like hydro web blast or something. And I actually managed to pick up 2 of these since the last video I shot, so that's awesome to have extras in my collection. Let's talk about Spidey's Rogue. A big part of the series, I like that they all got their own episode to shine, and basically you got to see them before they became the bad guys and what kind of pushes them to kind of like pursue Spidey and basically want to squash the bug. So I'm actually going to do this in order in which they appeared in the show, starting with episode 1. It was Survival of the Fittest. It is the Vulture. So this is actually one of the figures I last talked about, maybe about a couple months ago. I'll talk about it quickly again, and I'll even leave a link in case you want to catch a much more in-depth review of it. But this figure is kind of hard to come by. There's currently one on eBay for $175, and I really like the look of this guy. He actually came in later in the wave for the figures, so they had enough time to like get it right. And again, he looks fantastic. He looks just like in the show. A little bit hard to stand, but I do keep him actually like floating above the rest of the characters on my shelf. If he'll stand, I have no idea, so I might just cut. Alright, so he just propped up in the back. Moving on to episode 2, we have interactions with Electro. Now, a common thing with a lot of these figures that I have, I bought them all loose. Dang it. I might just leave them down here for a while. Okay, so basically, a lot of these figures, I bought them loose when I was younger at a flea market, and so a lot of these, I do not have the complete accessories. For example, this Electro is supposed to come with a little blast effect that plugs into his right hand, as well as a pretty neat interchangeable head with his contained mask. So basically it would have like the goggles and the covered mouth and everything. But I think this figure is pretty cool. Unfortunately, he does suffer from having the gimmick attached to himself with the right arm. Fortunately, you can still build the elbow, although I do wish he just didn't have this electric effect and instead came with something that you could just attach to the wrist or something. But for the look, it does look pretty good. You can see the meanness in his face. His whole face is the Electro mask, so that's pretty cool. He's got the details of the electric tubes running through the side of his chest and on the back. And nice little containment suit, again, all green. Very different from the classic comic books, but at least they kept the classic colors. Moving on to episode 3, we got Natural Selection with Dr. Connors the Lizard. It's kind of weird. Oh, actually, maybe not so weird. I was going to say it's a little weird that Dr. Connors became the Lizard so early in the series. Maybe I thought they would have built up to a little bit more. But I forget that in the animated series, he was actually the very first villain. So this Lizard, apart from it being very show accurate and having moderate to really good articulation, the fact is that he is too short. Scaled to Spidey, he is basically a dwarf. So the size is not accurate. Unfortunately, that's a common issue with some of these figures, and only a very limited few actually fit in to the scale with your other Spider-Mans. So this guy came with no accessories, but instead he does come with a gimmick. Oh wait, I thought he was supposed to like have a moving slashing tail. Maybe I'm thinking of a different figure. Never mind. Okay, so this one does just have the articulated tail then, so you can swivel it around and bend it. He does have bends at the knee. The elbows, no biceps, so they're kind of stuck out on this kind of zombie form. No jaw, but you can swivel his head around. So he even has little details like his little name tag right there on the side of his shirt. So pretty neat Lizard. There is that one, and there is a secondary release one with like a different pattern on his scales, and it almost kind of looks like slime, but not really. Episode 4, we got Market Forces with the Shocker. Who actually appeared in the very first episode, but not with his Shocker costume. He was just with Fancy Dan and Ox trying to catch Spidey in alongside Vulture. So this is actually one of the better figures for this series in terms of villains, because again, he has no gimmick on him, and he scales just fine with Spidey over here. He actually looks like a grown adult, and he does have show accuracy in the colors and everything. He has moderate, good articulation. The only thing that's missing to really take this guy over the top is some ankle articulation, because he is kind of tricky to stand. But as you can see, he does have a head swivel, arms that go in and out. He even has a bicep swivel, a single jointed elbow, no waist, no crunch. He does have legs that can kick forward, and you can adjust them to go out. He does have a single bend at the knee, and that's about it. But I think this figure is pretty badass. I like you can see his eyes through his visor, because this is a separate piece over his head, and all the shocker padding is sculpted onto the figure itself. A little bit hard to stand, but yeah, this is one of the better Spidey figures. Unfortunately, I do not have his blast effect because I also bought this one loose. Moving on to episode 5, we got Competition. So this is more of a, well, actually I think Shocker, Sandman, and then we got up next Rhino. We're all part of the 3 experiments that I think it was Hammerhead and Norman Osborn were running in order to create supervillains. So yeah, Flint Marko, Sandman. Unfortunately, this guy does not have much articulation. He has show accuracy, and he does have some really cool gimmicks. Like, I do not have it complete either, but you can, in theory, switch this out for a hammer. Vulture fell over again. So you can see you can swivel his hand around, but that's just by nature because of the fact that you can interchange his hand. but he does have very limited articulation because he does have sand legs. But unfortunately, he is stuck in this position. There actually is 2 ways to get this Sandman. The second release is from the Spider Charge series. And instead of having like a hammer, it does come with like a sand turbine or something of the sort that's just not very realistic and is not all sand and it has like metal details and stuff, so that's kind of weird. So I would much rather recommend you get this release of it with, you know, more realistic sand weapons like a hammer. You know, I almost completely forgot he has this on his back. I never even used that. So it does that stuff. It makes no sense for it to go backwards. I think it should more than anything like go forwards. Unless you snap his arm forward and then it would look like he's like hitting something with a hammer. Nope, never mind, no sir. So that's Sandman. Moving on to episode 6, we got the Invisible Hand with the Rhino's debut. One of my favorite characters in the series just because he has some really funny dialogue. His voice actor, whose name escapes me, aka Mr. Krabs, I really like his portrayal of Rhino. He's like so witty yet dumb, and I don't know, I feel like it just sounds perfect to me. So I really enjoy his portrayal. So this Rhino is very awesome. And in package, he looks huge because they got him in the box with his head all the way up. So he looks huge. But unfortunately, he is very short. He's nowhere near the scale he is in the show. But if you do cock his head up all the way, he is a little bit taller than Spidey. But if he were like normal, it would make him look shorter. But thankfully, he is pretty beefy. He's thick. He's a little wide. His details are pretty good. He's got the little red pupils, little horn. His face expression is good. He's got the little beady eyes looking up mad. His arms are super long. I do think it has a gimmick, so I think if you squeeze his legs, he does this motion, almost like he's doing a Rhino charge. So thankfully, it does not really impede anything, really. But he just kind of slouches, but he can stand on his own just fine, and his arms are intact, although they can only swivel frontways and backwards. That was weird. He does have a single jointed elbow that barely gets to 90 because it hits his gigantic bicep, but overall the aesthetic does match the show very well. So that's Rhino right there. I think he only had 1 release. So moving on to episode 7, Catalyst. The Green Goblin makes his debut, one of Spider-Man's greatest foes of all time, if not the greatest foe, right alongside Doc Ock, which coincidentally was the very next episode. So I actually talked about this Green Goblin very recently, and I'll leave a link to that one as well, if you want to take a more in-depth, closer look at this figure. But to basically summarize it, it is a great figure, probably the greatest villain figure that they released for this series, in the sense that, again, no gimmick on the figure. It's on the glider, but it's not stupid. It's very simple. It's something that actually makes sense and that he does in the show. And he actually comes with a decent amount of accessories. With his pumpkin bombs, his articulation is pretty good. His deco and his show accurateness is through the roof. So I highly recommend this one if you can find him new. Ironically, episode 8 is the debut of the man with 8 limbs. It is Dr. Octavius, Doc Ock, Dr. Octopus, all of those names. And this particular figure is probably the rarest one to find, at least for me. I have never seen this come up anywhere on eBay, men on card at least. I've seen him loose. The one time I did, I bought him up. So actually the seller I bought this from was for $5. I'm guessing maybe he thought it was a McDonald's toy because the playability is very minimal, but the show accuracy is so much better. So Doc Ock actually had a release in about the first wave of Spectacular Spider-Man figures. And that figure was nowhere near show accurate. It looked really silly. So clearly, again, maybe like a mishap of early production art or something of the sort. But this second release just corrects everything. And he's from the Spider Charge series. And I've only ever seen a select few of people who have this figure. The first time I heard about this was from the review spot years ago. And I've been searching for it ever since then. And as you can see, these tentacles, if you're familiar, are not the ones that come with it. The ones that do come with it, they're a lot shorter. They are bendy, but they're a lot shorter. And they don't have quite the little clasps that these do. So these tentacles are actually from an Ultimate Spider-Man Doc Ock figure that is no longer like for sale anywhere. I've actually looked for it because these tentacles are really good. They're very bendy, they're long. And much like the show, they do have the green highlights on it. So this Doc Ock does have the holes in the back, and surprisingly enough, these tentacles do fit onto the back. So for now, that's where they are, and yeah, I think he looks a lot better with these long tentacles, because in the show, they were ridiculously long. I don't know where they were retracting from, but they were hella long. And if you ever find this guy for sale on eBay or Mercari or anything of the sort, I highly suggest you jump on it, because this guy is just, he's the master planner. You know, you need this guy to complete your particular Spider-Man shelf. So to basically go over this guy's articulation, his head does go side to side. His elbows have a swivel underneath his gigantic jackets. And basically his feet swivel, but like at a weird cut at the knee. He is a little tricky to stand, so I don't want to ruin it too much. And with these tentacles, he's a little top heavy, but there you go. That's Doc Ock. And he is a little big, so compare him to Spidey, he's pretty wide. Not quite as short as he was in the show, but I don't mind. So that's a great looking Doc Ock. Highly suggest you go looking for that one. So unfortunately, we never got a Black Hat figure to represent Episode 10 Persona. Episode 11 was the Sinister Six, which you can actually complete with these all of these figures. With Ock, Sandman, Shocker, Electro, Vulture, and Rhino. That's your Sinister Six right there. Moving on to episode 12 and 13, Intervention in Nature versus Nurture. It's Venom. So this Venom has a bunch of releases. I can't even name how many there are. There might be like 4, maybe 5. But I think the definitive one is one that's called like Symbiote Claw / Attack or something. And it has like attachable symbiote pieces that you can clip onto his form. But take that stuff off because he never uses that. And this guy, what you end up with, is a semi-show accurate Venom for the most part. In the show, he's all full on black, so I don't know why they insist on having to put like blue on him or blue highlights. But at least this guy has the logo accurately painted on his chest. His face sculpt is pretty accurate as well. Mine has a little bit of scuffs because I paid $5 for it because I could never find one for cheap, brand new in the box. There's his huge back. He's got some huge arms, dude, like not just muscular, but they're really long, and they almost feel like a different material because they're a little bit softer rubber. So aside from that, this guy being shown accurate, visually, yes, but like height-wise, no. You can see he's a lot shorter than Ock. Put him next to Spidey, he's nowhere near monstrous as he is in the show. Again, another victim of the weird height from Hasbro. So that's the end of the essential Spectacular Spider-Man figures to get. Unfortunately, we never got too much of an expansion during the Season 2. We never got Mysterio. We never got Kraven, whether it be in his regular form or his lion form. Who else am I missing? We never got Silvermane. Who else did we miss? We never got a Tombstone either. And he was there since the first series, so quite odd. I think they mostly went for the characters that were more colorful, or maybe in the first few episodes. I don't know. I do really miss the show. I really wish they had gone back and made those characters that I just named off. But anyway, I reminisce on this show way too much. In fact, this whole channel is built on that. Anyway, so yeah, these are the essential Spectacular Spider-Man figures to get for your collection, in my opinion. There are plenty of other releases. I forgot to mention that this Green Goblin has a weird like camo release figure that has like spy stuff. I can't even describe it, but it has like a weird glider. But of course, there's lots of Spider-Man with the gimmicks. But essentially, what I was going for with this video was talking about the ones that match the show, and they would look great on the shelf to represent the show. So basically, yeah, this is the whole video. Again, huge shout out to Slide In. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Thank you so much for contacting me and helping me get a Black Suit Spider-Man. I really appreciate it. It's really badass. And I'm definitely going to put it to use, whether it be in my shelf or a possible stop motion one day. Who knows? And I have actually made a stop motion using this Spidey before, so I'll actually leave that as a link also, because it's actually a pretty good video in my opinion. I made long ago. I'm starting to ramble, so I should probably just get out of here. So there you go, guys. That's the Spectacular Spider-Man collection that you should have. Thank you so much for watching. Gato, Perro.